This is the Realty Classroom Podcast, episode number 115. The 4 key character traits of an ideal seller. Are you a real estate agent with an entrepreneurial spirit who wants to turn your job into a business without sacrificing your lifestyle, but you just can't seem to find the right plan or any plan to help you get there? Well, then, hey, you're definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the Realty Classroom and the host of this podcast. Now, to help you take immediate action to get started in the right direction, I've created a free jumpstart course for you so you can get a little bit more strategic about this business, and it's waiting at freeagentgift.com. I should see a lot more of you running over to get at least the printout of how the business works. I know we all think we know how it works, but it is so intricately involved. You need a plan and one-page infographic. How about just a little compass like that to get you started? freeagentgift.com. All right. In this episode, I want to go over something that's really super important on the listing side, and that is to identify the 4 key character traits of an ideal seller. So the title itself is pretty loaded there because, what is an ideal seller? And so let's get into this. The first point here has to start off before the traits, why creating an ideal seller avatar matters. Now, if you've heard that term avatar, I use it in the sense of ideal prototype. Right? So in other words, if you're in a marketing situation or trying to be strategic for the first time about marketing, you have to understand, to whom am I speaking? Where is this message going to go to? And is it a match with this person? So when we start in business, and especially in the real estate agency business, we don't really know where these home sellers are. We're not even sure where they're going to come from yet, but we're so reactionary when they do that we're underprepared. See, if you could begin to identify the ideal seller, and this is a fun exercise because you get to be selfish. You get to determine what you would really see as ideal. So as you look at it, you get to be the creator of this ideal person. And I know you're going to say, well, that's ridiculous. I'd just do business with anyone. Well, I understand that from a cash flow standpoint. I understand that from a practical standpoint. But I don't know anybody that's really good at anything that over time doesn't evolve out of that mentality and begin to question their own methodologies to become more strategic, more managed, more predictable, more intentional about what they're doing. And that's definitely for all you top producers out there. Boy, I just see so many people addicted to just plowing forward and chasing the leads. And then they wonder why there's always a ceiling and there's always problems. Well, what's the strategy to get out of it? I would challenge you. And if you're new to this business, it might sound super foreign. Well, who am I? I'd take anything that came right now. I've been starving for business. Well, maybe that's the problem. Maybe the fact that you don't even really know who you're trying to attract your way is the problem. So let's just assume for anybody, this is a big issue. So it matters for those reasons that in marketing, if I know that there's an ideal, imaginary even person out there to begin with, then it affects how I do everything. And in fact, what comes first, right? The chicken or the egg in this case? Sorry, all you vegan friends of mine, because I am too now. It just hit me. I shouldn't be using those analogies anymore. But the idea is, look, I need to attract this person in. So if I'm going to go choose a platform, if I'm going to go and look at lead generation, if I'm going to try to talk to my sphere of influence, if I'm going to do social media, that's all voice. The medium is the only thing that's changing. I'm trying to put the voice that's attached to my unique selling proposition. Why me? Why should this person do business with me? And stop driving by all these beautiful houses that say sold and say, well, I could never. Well, yes, you could. Yes, you could if you slow down and you go through this. So over time, what's happened, and I've been at this a very long time now, 21 years to be specific, in both the agency side of it, as an agent, to a broker owner, to an active agent, as I record this here. Yes, I'm an agent in my own company and all that crap about, you compete with your broker. What? What? I don't know, man. Some crazy things in this business. I digress, okay? Maybe it's too hot outside. We're already into the summer months here. But the point is, look, you really need to think about this ideal character. And when you do, and in my case, they come to you and you recognize them So as a top producer, I've had a whole bunch of sellers at all different price ranges from all different backgrounds socioeconomically. And so I'm able to say, hey, these are the character traits of the people that I like the best. Why don't I just cull them out, put them down in a plan, and then see how that can affect my messaging? We just did this with the mastermind group this week, and it was super powerful. Everybody was leaning in saying, wow, we already knew this stuff, but we've never taken the time to pull it out. So here we go. Trait number 1. This might sound like something that you didn't even think about, because it's not really a character trait in a personality. It's a disposition. But the trait is they have a reason to sell. I know, let it sink in. It's this whole idea of starting with why. And I think in this case, when we go through all of our telemarketing and our marketing and our mastermind group, we do a lot of things with gift giving and authority and a lot of laws of influence. By the way, fabulous book, Robert Cialdini, Cialdini, his book Influence. He really breaks down very simply a lot of the laws that are behind the way that humans react with each other. And they're so obvious and so easy to understand, yet we just trample all over them and ignore them. Okay. So the reason I bring that up first is because how do you get to the why? How does somebody read their mind aloud for you so that you know if there is a real reason to sell? Well, you have to set it up so that if you want to see if they have that characteristic, let's go backwards a little bit here. In a telemarketing context, for example, where most people would start on the phone with somebody, it can be in face-to-face at a party, especially at an open house, real contextually, like outbound calls like expireds, inbound humans like an open house. Let's use those 2 examples. And in they come. And I know what we want to know because here we are working on, well, I want to know if this person's ideal. And that's the selfish approach, which needs to be introduced at some point, because if you're not selfish about getting business, then you're not going to have any business. So in they come. And we have to understand that if we want them to reveal to us these character traits that I'll go through here, we better be giving in the beginning, not taking. And you hear this all the time in good marketing about give, ask. Okay? There's no exact formula like that, but I would tell you this. If you understand their context first. So we're dealing with sellers here today. Let's say it's the quote unquote negative term, nosy neighbor comes over to an open house and you're all crestfallen. Oh, shoot, they don't want to buy it. How do you even recognize that they were coming through the door because they were trying to see how their home compared, and they were actually softly interviewing you? So you see, the disposition that we always want to take, or we're leaning in white-fisted, driving the car 100 miles an hour that we don't even see the forest for the tree that's right in front of us, right? So there we are, white-knuckled, looking at this thing, and in they come. And we start to get all over them. Hey, really? Were you looking for yourself? Hey, why? Why are you moving? Why? Right? Instead of saying, hey, thank you so much for coming to the property today. Sellers ask that everybody sign in, so if you don't mind doing so. And then the feature sheet, which is what you want, is sitting right there too. And people say to me, oh, in Seattle and, Palo Alto and this place, New York, New Jersey, they'd never do that. Whoa, wait a minute. Of course they would. This is professionalism. And so that law of authority to be at the front of an open house or telemarketing. Danny, this is Sally Brown from XYZ Realty. See, those are laws of authority. And if you don't even understand these basics of how to deal with people in a business professional context, you start there so that this all begins to make simple sense. And we did that in our mastermind group with the telemarketing script where we said, look, for example, if I want to get somebody to tell me why they're really visiting the open house so that I can see if it is a neighbor who's thinking about also selling, so that becomes now a source of potential business for me, that open house for sellers. I know a lot of us think about the buy side first. I have more sellers come vet me and take a look at what we're doing at an open house than you can imagine. But sometimes if we're not ready to give, we look right over it. So the idea is they come in, we use the law of authority. They begin to feel, wow, there's a professionalism here. Okay, sure. Well, I'm just looking, yeah, that's okay. But the seller would still appreciate knowing who went through their house. It's open to the public, so just from a security standpoint, they'd appreciate it, even if you just put your name down. That's okay with me. So I'm not going to fight them over that. I'm going to ask them to do so. Then I'm going to give them what they wanted, which is that gift. Here we go. Law of authority coupled with the law of reciprocity. Here's a full sheet with all the pictures on it. By the way, there's even a printed brochure. You can take that. So, boom, we've given them what they want. Now, what about an outbound situation? Can you use these same laws to determine whether this is a true avatar for you or not? Of course. Telemarketing, same way. I just said it. Danny, this is Sally Brown from XYZ Realty. Now you go into the next round of what we talk about. I'm calling you because, Cialdini's trigger word. People lean in. Am I in trouble? What did I do? Is there something in it for me? Because is a powerful word, right? I'm calling you because I saw your beautiful house online. Compliment. Beautiful house online, right? Beautiful house is a compliment that makes you likable. The law of likability. You see, these things are all setting us up so that then we can say, I have something for you. I'd like to send you something that will help you sell it the next time. May I do that? Permission marketing. Not quite a law, but a law of marketing. If I get permission to market to you, it's much more powerfully received. And so now, finally, after all this, I can finally get to trait 1. Oh, by the way, it does look like a beautiful house. Why are we thinking about selling it? Oh, by the way, now that they've picked up the sheet and they're walking through the open house, were you looking for yourselves? So now you can get into searching for the why, because the law of reciprocity or gift giving, when I give the gift first, I tend to get something in return almost out of a mind click. Reciprocity. Geez, thanks so much. Yeah, I'm just looking for myself because of this. Boom. Why? Now I lean in and I listen. Is that a real reason to sell? Trait number 1, a real reason to sell. That's all I'm looking for. Well, we got a job transfer and we have to be out of here by the summer. Ba-boom. Awesome. This house is really getting, too tough for us. We got too old too quickly. We can't get out and cut the grass anymore. It's costing us too much money. And we really need to be out by the end of the year. Ba-boom. No rocket science. Trait number 1. Trait number 2. Well, geez, in that case, what I could do is I could send you some information that will help you get ready to sell it. Doesn't sound like you're quite ready yet, but over in the next 6 months, it sounds like you will be. So at the open house here, I brought with me a copy of my seller course. I also included in here a bunch of the properties in addition to the one you're looking at here that's actively for sale. I brought a bunch that have sold so you can see what's generally going on in this neighborhood. I'm presuming that you live close by? Yes, we do. Does this feel like your price range? Yeah, it could be. All right, well, why don't you take this? And then in here are the 7 steps we use to list this property too. Now, that's all done up in a nice folder. All the information is organized. It's simple. It's easy to understand. And I do it again. I invoke the law of gift giving and I give it to them. Now what I'm watching for, are they agreeable to all this give and take? It's the second trait. Are they agreeable? See, a lot of people, and I'm not saying that some people won't break down over time. There are people that are definitely more cautious. They're not going to be agreeably in a conversation like this. And I would say agreeable, there's a pleasantness to them and the way that they interact. Now, this is a slippery slope when it comes to this trait of agreeability. Somebody can just be patronizing you so that they're uncomfortable with all this stuff that's going on. You should be able to read that. But when you're in a flow with somebody, they're agreeable to the back and forth. They're not so standoffish. They don't have these weird paradigms, or worse, and I'll get into this, something to watch for at the end. You don't feel some weird nefarious reason that they've come to the open house or they're trying to put you off on the phone. You don't smell something's off. It's just pleasant. It's light. It's agreeable. They're agreeable to an exchange. Now, when somebody becomes agreeable, the conversation expands, and it doesn't mean that we should lose ourselves in that conversation with a seller. Some people that are high eyes on the DISC personality profile test, they love to talk. That's what they do. And so the next thing you know, 25 minutes later, you're talking about grandchildren and kids and this, and you've lost your context. And you say, my gosh, we had such a great meeting. I wonder why they never would let me follow up with them. Because you never gave them this next deep dive, which is coachability. That's the third trait. Are they coachable? What does that mean? How do I even get into coaching somebody on a telemarketing script? Or how do I get into, doing it in an open house or meeting them at a kid's soccer game? Well, it's pretty easy if you're following these steps logically. I mean, I used to go out in just the wild of life with a stack of business cards in my pocket before I really knew much of what was going on. And intuitively, I was doing these things. I was listening for context. Was somebody talking about real estate? I'd say, oh, really? I'm a realtor. Were you thinking about doing something? How come? And I would be asking these questions, but I wasn't really saying, oh, that's a real reason. And then try to be in a conversation where they were agreeable to just talk further with me, even if that's all, there's a pleasantness to the conversation. Oh, really? Interesting. Where you been looking? How long you been looking? And they're agreeing to go back and forth with me. Then you get into this coachability. Now here's what I would do if I were you. I'm not asking you to be my client. I'm not asking to come over your house yet. Here's what I would do if I were you. I've been doing it for a few years now, and here's what I've learned. See, you can get up underneath people when you start to coach them. You don't have to get up on top of them and say, well, you better, and you better be careful of this, all this weird stuff we do. Say, look, here's one thing that I've learned along the way in the real estate business is that if you're thinking about selling your house inside the next 6 months, now I'm even clarifying the why and its timing. If you're thinking about doing that, what I would do is I would really understand that there's a strategy to being successful. And the sooner you start understanding that, the better off you'll be. Now, here's my chance for some sort of a close, quote, upsell, whatever you want to call it. What I could do, because now remember, they have a real reason to sell. We've been agreeably going back and forth in an exchange. And now I'm beginning to offer some advice. And it's about to go from just information into a combination of my insight, my information and my insight wrapped together, and I'm going to see how they respond to this. So when we talk about how to make an offer, it's really just to see if they're accepting now the coachability. We've gone from a pleasant back and forth to now I'm trying to get in position as a guide who's coaching. I'm not asking for any kind of lockdown or business, or I'm not sounding weird and desperate. I'm just simply trying to transfer over to the next level of evolution in trait identification. Is this my ideal seller? Are they coachable? What I found is if you follow a plan and you get going early on that plan in the next 6 months, you're going to be much better off so that you don't get caught off guard when it's time to go, because it can be very stressful. So what I'd be happy to do is if you want to give me your best email or mailing address, I'll send you out the exact plan that I've been using with my clients. There's no obligation to it. It's just 7 steps, but it'll fully articulate the things you need to think about between now and the time that you list so you don't get caught off guard and you're all stressed out. Also, what I'll put in there, so if you give me the address, I'll do a radius search around that property, and I'll find all the properties that have most recently sold in your neighborhood, because even if they're not exactly like yours, those values are affecting yours one way or another. So that's a little bit more of information. And the insight, the little drop there is the fact that I even offered to send sold properties. Now, there's no interpretation. So if you really look at what I'm doing is I'm coaching them to say, you need a plan, without clubbing them over the head and say, you need a plan. Here's my plan. I'll share it with you. On top of that, here are some properties that have sold recently. I can send you all the pictures and details right out of the multiple listing service, right? And then I can begin to maybe get into really guiding them on what happens and maybe upselling them if they're really leaning and go, geez, this sounds great. This sounds great. We really wanted to do this sooner than later. Well, if you want to, I can hand deliver it. So you see how I just walked the stairs? Because what I'm doing simultaneously is seeing, is this anybody's ideal seller because of these traits being revealed. A real reason, an agreeable back and forth to warm it up. They fall into a coachability mindset where they know I sound like a guide who knows what they're talking about. I offer information, and then I offer a visit if it's appropriate. That's all there is to it. And I am telling you, every time I violate this type of a profile, my team inevitably has difficulty with the seller. We have to go back, even if they started off sounding agreeable. Did they really, or did I ignore something because I wanted the listing? This becomes really important because sellers without these traits are going to pose some serious challenge. I'm not saying that you can't get through it. I do all the time. All the time, one of these traits gets violated or gets thrown off, and for legitimate reasons. Sometimes people just freak out. They started off being agreeable and coachable, and then all of a sudden the reality of the move, they freak out, they paralyze. Just happened to me the other day with a buyer. Up here looking at properties for the fourth time. Came close to writing an offer and just froze again. So we just have to be patient. Doesn't mean they're not coachable anymore. It just means they're struggling with fear and change. Now the last one is a Buffett thing. Thank you, Warren Buffett, for simplifying. He's like my Einstein of business. These guys just knew how to simplify things. Trait number 4, going to sound obvious, and it's the underlying thing that you'll be able to recognize whether they have it or not all the way along from the very start. They must have integrity. In a coaching moment the other day, one of my superstars said to me, this guy said, well, I want to get the lowest price possible to really hurt my wife in this divorce. It's over. I'm sorry, I'm not the right person for you, she said. And it was over. That's a biggie. So if you sense for 1 second that somebody's trying to compromise you or they have compromised morals, it's over. This is your business. This is your reputation. And I get it. We all want the cash flow, but there's nothing worse than nefarious, bad, malevolent business. Run away. So let me go through these again. The 4 key character traits of an ideal seller starts off by saying the fact that you even need to create a seller is probably the most important part of this. But when you do, an ideal seller, trait 1, they have to have a reason to sell, a real reason, and hopefully inside the next 6 months. Trait 2, they have an agreeable personality. They're willing to go back and forth with you in a pleasant, professional, respectful way. Trait 3, they're coachable. They'll begin to allow your guidance to come in and not fight it at every moment. Trait 5, which is the biggie and underlying all of this, they must have integrity and be honest people. Let me summarize it this way. If you don't take time to create an ideal seller avatar, you'll struggle to close listings. An ideal seller who has a real reason to sell and is generally agreeable and coachable will help you both reach your goals, okay? But, of course, if they lack integrity to begin with, reject the business immediately and run away, all right? All right, here we go. Remember, you can take immediate action to get started in this kind of a direction. If you like what you're hearing here, there's a basic plan that you can walk through. It's the one I just referred to with sellers. I'm giving it to you. You don't have to do anything with me other than download it. And it's sitting there waiting for you over at freeagentgift.com. Also, don't forget, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. We also broadcast our live sales training calls on Facebook and especially YouTube. We're going to do more and more there every Friday at 1 o'clock EDT. And the recordings are there. Go check them out. So remember to turn on your our page and channel notifications for the Realty Classroom so you won't miss the reminders. We'd also appreciate it if you would comment on our posts. Please engage me, will you? I'd love to offer some free guidance and insight if you would engage me on any of those platforms. But remember this, I appreciate you listening, but nobody's coming for you. So go get to work on your own business, and I will see you in the next episode.